Hey guys, it's Deacon Matt, and I'm back here with you today to talk about the importance of establishing a good routine in your life. I know right now a lot of us are feeling very unsettled because we're kind of shaken out of our regular routines because of all the the safety protocols and the social isolation and things that we're experiencing because of the coronavirus. But establishing a good routine for ourselves is good not just for our own, peace of mind, but it's actually an important element of growing in holiness. To be holy is to be like God, and God himself is an ordered being. God has order. He's not chaotic. He's not random. God has rational intellect, and therefore he is ordered. And we see this reflected in his creation. This is why the natural sciences are possible, because there is an order to creation. Creation obeys certain natural laws that God has instilled into it, and these can be studied and understood. We see this reflected in art. Art that we find to be beautiful, whether it's visual art or music or literature. The reason why we find it to be beautiful is because there's an order to it that we recognize and we find attractive. We see this in the structure of the church. The church is governed by a hierarchy, and hierarchy simply means order. There is a logical order to bishop, priest, deacon, the sacrament of holy orders, we call it, so it's important that our own lives be ordered. When our own lives are disordered, it doesn't just unsettle us and make us feel kind of out of sorts, but it actually makes it much harder for us to grow in holiness when there's disorder in our life. So what can we do to make our lives more ordered? Well, the masters of this are the monks. The masters are the monks. They, in fact, monastic orders, we call them, right? We call them religious orders, people who enter into this religious life. They've dedicated themselves to living out the Christian life according to a specific rule, a specific order that's laid out for them, a specific way of just ordering their day. And so we can learn a lot about this by studying some of the monastic rules. And one of the most common is the rule of Saint Benedict. The Rule of Saint Benedict. You can get this online. It's not that long. I encourage you to read it, make a study of it, and read it with an eye towards what lessons can I draw from this for my own life. Right? Even if you're not a monk, right? There's lessons that you can draw from this monastic order that you can incorporate into your own day-to-day life. And one of the first lessons that I've took from my own study of the Rule of Saint Benedict is just how practical it is, and all-encompassing. So the Rule of Saint Benedict contains, what you would expect it to contain. It contains information about the spiritual formation of the monks and the structure of their prayer life, when they're going to pray, how they're going to pray, that sort of thing. But it has some real practical stuff in there that you need to consider if you're living in a group of people. Like, who's going to cook the meals? Who's going to wash the dishes? When is that going to be done? Who's going to be responsible for taking care of the clothing and mending the clothing? Who's going to be responsible for welcoming guests? When there's conflict among the religious brothers, how is that going to be arbitrated? It's a very practical thing. So sometimes when we are thinking about, our own routine and our own rule that we want to set for ourselves, we might focus just on the spiritual. Right? So, I want to grow in holiness and I want to pray more, so I'm going to do all these spiritual things. But we forget about our other responsibilities. And, and those are also part of our life. And so we need to consider them. So the first step I would say is think about all your responsibilities according to your state in life. What are your obligations? Our first obligation is towards God, and you can't forget that. And that's important, because if we don't fulfill our obligations to God, the consequences are not always immediate. And so when things get a little hectic, when they get a little crazy, a lot of times it's our obligations to God that go out the door first. If you fail in your obligations as a student, you're going to pay the consequences for that. You're going to fail the test. You're going to fail the class. If you fail in your obligations as an employee, you're going to feel the consequences of that. You'll get reprimanded by your boss. You might lose your job. If you fail in your obligations towards God, the consequences are not always immediate. It's not like if you miss church on Sunday, you're going to get struck by lightning or something. But the consequences long-term are much more serious, even eternal. So we have to put God first and our relationship with him first. But after that, what are some of our other responsibilities, right? If you're a student, what are your academic responsibilities? If you have a job, what are your responsibilities to your employer? What are your responsibilities to your family? What are your responsibilities to your friends? What are your responsibilities to yourself? We have a responsibility to take care of ourselves, our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health. Are you giving yourself enough time for exercise? Are you eating right? Are you giving yourself leisure time? Are you getting enough sleep at night? So think about these things. Spend some time actually thinking about, what are all of my responsibilities? What are the obligations that I have to myself, to others, to God? And am I giving myself enough dedicated time in my schedule to meet those obligations? And if not, what can I do to make that happen? What are some things that I might be spending too much time on that I don't really have an obligation towards, that are not really benefiting me, that I can let go of? So I can structure my time and the way that I spend my day in order to meet the actual obligations, the important obligations that I have. Okay, so that's the first thing. Just be very practical about all of your obligations that you have, not just the spiritual ones, but on a human level, all of your obligations. The other piece of advice I would give you is to be realistic about what your expectations are. So if you feel like you're not praying enough and you want to pray more, that's great. That's great. Find ways to pray more. Ordinarily, I might say, try and go to Mass more often. Maybe go to daily Mass a couple times during the week. Spend a holy hour in adoration. Go to confession on a regular basis. Right? These are all really great things. Right now, though, some of those things are not practical. There's no public masses being offered because of the coronavirus. So saying you want to go to Mass more often is great, but you can't do that. So don't kind of have a defeatist attitude about it and say, well, I want to go to Mass more often, but I can't, and so therefore I'm not going to pray. I'm going to give up. No. Focus instead on what you can do. What can you do from home? You can read the scriptures from home. You can pray the rosary from home. You can experience all kinds of daily devotionals at home, right? Focus on what you can do. Be very realistic about it. And be realistic about what you're capable of, too. If one of the things that you're struggling with is sleeping in the morning because you no longer have, that 8 a.m. class to wake up for, and so you've been sleeping in a lot, but that's wasting a lot of time and you want to be better about it. If you struggle to get up in the morning, don't say, I'm going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm going to go jog for 2 miles and get in some exercise and I'm going to pray the rosary all before breakfast. And don't set that goal for yourself if you don't think you're going to actually be able to meet it because you're not a morning person. If you've been sleeping in until 10 o'clock every morning, try waking up at 8. Okay? Just set realistic goals for yourself. Be realistic. The next piece of advice is to be specific. Be specific. Set specific goals for yourself and how you're going to spend your time. If you want to, read more scriptures, that's great, right? That's a great goal. I got a lot more time on my hands right now because I'm at home. I've always said I wanted to read the Bible more. I'm going to read the Bible more, during this coronavirus quarantine. That's great. When are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? Set a specific time. I'm going to read the Bible for half an hour a day from 12 to 12:30. I'm going to set an alarm on my phone at 11:50, give myself a 10-minute warning to wrap up whatever it is I'm working on. I'm going to get my Bible. I'm going to go sit in my room. I'm going to close the door so that no one's bothering me, and I'm going to read the scriptures for half an hour. Be specific about exactly when and where you're going to do that. If you're going to pray the rosary every day, that's a great goal to have. When are you going to do that? Are you going to do it first thing when you wake up in the morning? Are you going to do it at nighttime before you go to bed? Find a time to do that. Be specific about that goal. And you can do this for everything that you set out to do. If you say that you need to set aside at least 2 hours during the day to study so that you can do well in your classes, when are you going to do that? Block that time off on your calendar. Be specific. If you're not specific about it, it's not going to get done. And then the final piece of advice that I would have about setting your routine is to be flexible. Be flexible and forgiving with yourself, because it might take you a little while to find a good routine that actually works for you and is feasible. You're not a monk. You're not a monk. You're not living in a religious community where everyone is following the same order, where you have an abbot, to report to. You're not a monk. You live in the world, and you've got other concerns, and you have a certain amount of discretion over your own time. So you might have certain goals for yourself, but every so often you need to reevaluate and say, is this schedule that I have set for myself, is this routine I'm trying to live by actually working? Right? Am I failing to live up to these goals that I set for myself? And if I am, is that my own fault because I'm just not, I'm not being attentive to it and I need to do better? Or is that the fault of is that me setting too high expectations? Do I need to adjust my expectations? Do I need to adjust my schedule? Or maybe it used to work, but situations changed and I need to, make some adjustments because it's no longer practical. Be very flexible about it. And here's where it helps to make a nightly examination of conscience. And I don't mean an examination of conscience the same way you would before you go to confession. I just mean a nightly review of how you did that day. Right. If I set goals for myself that I want to set, give myself time every day to pray, to study, to work, and then to play, to relax. Right. Those are 4 really great categories. Right. At the end of the day, I can review, the day. Did I pray like I should have today? Did I spend enough time doing good work? Did I study like I wanted to study? And did I give myself enough time for leisure and relaxation, right? Think about that. And if I didn't, how can I do better the next day? Spend a little bit of time every evening just examining how your day went. Did I take advantage of all the opportunities God gave me to grow in grace? Did I not do some things that I should have done? And how can I be better at that? Okay, so be realistic about your schedule. Be very practical about it. Be very specific about what your goals are and how you're going to measure those. And then be flexible. Be flexible and don't be afraid to make some changes and tweak it as you go. So setting a routine for yourself will help you out greatly, not just in your own peace of mind, but in your quest for holiness and in your devotion to God. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about what to do when you can't follow your routine, when things outside of your control happen and kind of throw you out of whack, how best to deal with that. But for right now, again, I encourage you, look up that rule of St. Benedict, read it, do a little personal study of that, and set for yourself your own personal rule to help you get through the day. Praise be Jesus Christ.